You know, Kody's been promising that we'd build on Coyote Pass for years, and now I am starting to realize it was never going to happen. That is Janelle Brown, and her words have fans spiraling, because if what she is implying is true, that Kody never intended to really build on Coyote Pass, then the whole dream the Brown family sold for almost a decade was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Hey besties, welcome back to the channel. So apparently, Janelle Brown has finally had enough, and she is talking the truth about Coyote Pass, the land that has been sitting untouched while the family fell apart, might finally be coming out. And what is even wilder? According to new info that just surfaced, Kody might have been hiding more about the property than anyone realized, not just from the wives, but even from TLC itself. Now before we dive in, remember, this is all coming from Janelle's own words and bits of what insiders have shared recently. Nothing here is speculation for the sake of drama. These are patterns that go back years, so let's talk about it. Because Janelle didn't just drop hints, she basically exposed how Kody used Coyote Pass as a bargaining chip, a control move, and even a distraction from what was really happening inside the family. So here's the theory that has been making waves. Janelle didn't just speak out because she is angry. She spoke out because she is done being silent about what actually went down with Coyote Pass, and how Kody used it to keep the wives tied to him long after their relationships had fallen apart. Apparently, for years, Kody's been promising the same thing. We're gonna build it, is happening soon, the plans are coming together. But behind the scenes, that wasn't the case at all. According to what Janelle's been saying lately, and what a few family members have hinted at, there were huge financial problems with the land from the start. Problems Kody either ignored or covered up. Now this isn't just about money. This is about control, because if Kody could keep the dream of Coyote Pass alive, then he could keep each wife hoping, waiting, and emotionally tied to him. And Janelle, who has always been practical and independent, was the one who pushed the hardest for progress. She wanted to actually build. She wanted a home that was hers, something real. But every time she tried to move forward, Kody would stall. So now people are asking, was Coyote Pass ever really meant to be a family project? Or was it always meant to be Kody's insurance policy, a way to keep his family under control while pretending he was still the provider and visionary? Because if Janelle's right, that's exactly what happened. And when she finally realized the truth, that's when she started pulling away. Emotionally, financially, and eventually, completely. We're going to unpack all of this. The timeline, the manipulation, and the shocking parts Janelle says TLC never showed. But first, let's go back to when it all started. When Coyote Pass was supposed to be the Brown family's forever dream. Back when the Browns moved to Flagstaff, Coyote Pass was sold as the next chapter. Kody told everyone, the wives, the kids, the fans, that this was the land where the family would finally come together again. After years in Las Vegas, separate homes, and growing distance, this was supposed to be the solution. The idea sounded perfect. A massive piece of property, each wife getting her own house, but all connected as one big family compound. It was the polygamist version of the forever home. On camera, Kody painted it as a symbol of unity, the dream of what plural marriage could look like when done right. Off camera, things were different. Documents later showed that the land wasn't even fully paid off when the family started talking about building. Kody had split it into 4 parcels, but the ownership was uneven. Some parts were in Robyn's name, others in Janelle's, and the legal agreements didn't match the promises Kody made in interviews. Still, Janelle believed in the plan. She invested her money. She even lived in an RV on the property for a while because she genuinely thought building was around the corner. But that moment never came. And here's where it gets interesting. While Janelle was out there living in a trailer, dealing with weather, dust, and isolation, Kody was living comfortably in Robyn's house, saying things like, "It's not the right time to build. We need unity before we can move forward." Unity, the word he always used to stop anyone from asking too many questions. Janelle started realizing that the unity Kody kept talking about wasn't about the family. It was about control. If he could say, "We can't build because we're not united," then he could delay things forever, and no one could hold him accountable. For Janelle, that was the beginning of the end. She was watching her savings drain away, living in an RV on a dream that wasn't real. while Kody was making excuses about timing and the Lord's plan. That's when she began documenting everything. And now, years later, she's connecting the dots, and it's exposing how the Coyote Pass dream was never really about a family compound at all. So here's where things start to look calculated. Kody didn't just use Coyote Pass as a family dream, he used it as leverage. Whenever one of the wives questioned him, pushed back, or wanted more independence, Coyote Pass would come up. It was like his emotional reset button. Why are you being negative? We're supposed to be building a future together. You're ruining the unity we need to start construction. And it worked for years. Christine later admitted that one of the biggest reasons she stayed as long as she did was because she still believed they'd all eventually build and live together again. That dream gave her hope, even when the marriage itself was falling apart. For Janelle, though, it became clear that something didn't add up. Every time she asked about money, where it was, how much was left, how they were paying off the land, Kody would change the subject or blame her for being impatient. The truth is, Kody tied Coyote Pass to power. Each wife's stake in the property became a way to keep them tied to him financially. As long as their names were on those parcels, they couldn't fully walk away without losing something valuable. And Robyn, she benefited most, because while the other wives were waiting for Kody to figure things out, Robyn already had a house, a big one paid for, so the dream of Coyote Pass didn't affect her the same way. To the family, Coyote Pass was a future. To Kody, it was a strategy. He could talk about the plan to build for years without ever taking action. And as long as the wives believed in that plan, they wouldn't completely give up on him. But Janelle's patience finally ran out. When she realized that Kody hadn't even started the steps needed to get permits or financing for her build, and that he'd been diverting funds for other things, she started asking harder questions. Questions he didn't want to answer, and that's when, according to insiders close to her, the real cracks began to show, because Janelle didn't just want answers. She wanted proof. She wanted to see what Kody had been hiding all this time about Coyote Pass. And once she started digging, what she found changed everything. When Janelle finally started digging into the details of Coyote Pass, she wasn't looking for drama. She just wanted clarity. But the deeper she went, the more she realized how little control she actually had over something she'd helped fund for years. At first, she thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. She'd been contributing money from her own income, mostly through her health business and TLC paychecks, under the belief that she was investing in her future home. But when she reviewed the property records, things didn't line up. Her name wasn't on the title the way Kody had described. In fact, parts of the land were still in joint ownership, with Kody and Robyn listed on documents that were supposed to represent family property and the payments. Janelle noticed that they weren't being tracked properly. Some of her contributions had gone toward family debts and expenses unrelated to Coyote Pass. Meanwhile, Kody was telling her that progress was being made and the property's almost ready. Except, it wasn't. Taxes were behind. No permits had been filed, and the so-called building plans were nothing more than vague sketches that Kody used to keep the conversation alive. It was the same pattern over and over. Every time Janelle pushed for transparency, Kody shifted the focus. He'd talk about the vision instead of the facts. He'd bring up family unity, claiming that they couldn't move forward until everyone was spiritually aligned. Translation: he had no plan, and he didn't want to admit it. When Janelle finally confronted him directly, she asked a simple question. If this is supposed to be our family's land, why do you and Robyn control so much of it? And that's when Kody lost it. He told her she was being disrespectful, that she was trying to tear the family apart, that she didn't understand the bigger picture. But Janelle had had enough. She wasn't trying to destroy anything, she just wanted the truth. And when she realized that Kody's version of family property meant his property, she knew the whole dream was built on lies. Insiders later said that was the moment her attitude shifted. She stopped asking. She started documenting every bill, every receipt, every message. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was preparing for what came next. Because if Kody was going to twist the story, Janelle was ready to show the receipts. By the time Janelle had reached her breaking point, the tension inside the Brown family was boiling over. Christine was gone. Mary had mentally checked out, and Robyn seemed to be the only one Kody was emotionally investing in. But for Janelle, this wasn't just about love or jealousy. It was about fairness, about integrity. She'd built her whole life on self-reliance and honesty. And now she was staring at a husband who had turned their so-called family dream into a personal power play. It all came to a head one day during a heated argument, one that, according to Janelle, TLC only showed part of. In the episode, we see Janelle raise her voice for the first time in years, saying, "You're not treating me like an equal, Kody. You're acting like I'm disposable." But what viewers didn't see was what happened after the cameras stopped. Janelle allegedly told him point blank that she was done waiting for a man who hides behind religion to avoid accountability. Kody didn't take it well. He stormed off, called her disrespectful, and later told the producers that Janelle had become too independent, as if that were a flaw. But what really stung Janelle wasn't the argument itself. It was what happened next. Days later, she found out Kody had been in talks with Robyn about possibly refinancing part of Coyote Pass without consulting her or Christine. If that deal had gone through, it could have shifted ownership and made it even harder for Janelle to claim her share. That was it. That was the moment she decided to stop being silent. She reached out to an attorney for the first time, not to start a lawsuit, but to understand her rights, something Kody never expected her to do. And when she learned how precarious her position really was, she started opening up to people she trusted. That is when whispers started leaking out, stories about how Kody had been keeping Robyn's house separate from the rest of the family finances, how the other wives' contributions had quietly been absorbed into family expenses that Robyn never paid back into. Janelle didn't need to make accusations. She just started asking the right questions. And those questions made Kody furious, because for the first time he couldn't control the narrative. When filming resumed, Janelle was calm but distant. Fans noticed it right away. She wasn't arguing, but she wasn't participating either. It was the quiet before the storm, because once Janelle started speaking publicly, the cracks Kody had tried to cover for years finally split wide open. When Janelle finally broke her silence, it sent shockwaves through the entire Brown family. What started as quiet frustration turned into a full-blown confrontation that no one could ignore anymore. Christine was the first to reach out privately, telling Janelle she was proud of her for finally standing up for herself. Mary, on the other hand, stayed neutral, at least publicly, but sources close to production said even she started to question what else Kody had been hiding all these years. Kody, meanwhile, went into damage control mode. He told anyone who would listen that Janelle was confused, that she didn't understand the finances, and that she was being influenced by Christine's bitterness. But that spin didn't last long, because once the financial records started surfacing, documents showing just how uneven the property shares and loans really were, it became clear that Janelle's claims weren't just speculation. TLC producers were quietly thrilled. They'd been struggling to keep the show fresh, and suddenly they had real tension, real consequences, and a truth bomb that could rewrite everything fans thought they knew about the Browns. The family's group text thread blew up. Robyn was furious, claiming Janelle had betrayed the family's trust. But Janelle shot back, saying, "You can't betray a family that stopped being one years ago." That one message reportedly ended any communication between her and Robyn. Meanwhile, fans online began to connect the dots. Why the Coyote Pass project had stalled for so long, why Kody never seemed to follow through, and how Robyn's perfect image didn't quite match the behind-the-scenes reality. Even people close to the Browns said this was the first time anyone had seen Kody genuinely panicked. Because Janelle wasn't just another wife leaving quietly, she was exposing the system that kept them all in check. And when she started dropping specific details, names of banks, loan figures, the exact plots each wife had been promised, it wasn't gossip anymore, it was proof. For Kody, this wasn't just a family falling apart, it was a legacy unraveling. The man who built his identity around being the head of a plural family was now standing in the wreckage of his own making, and Janelle, she wasn't looking back. She once said on camera, "I am not angry, I am just free." But that freedom came with a price, and we'll talk about exactly what she lost, what she found, and the last straw that finally ended any chance of reconciliation. When Janelle started digging into the Coyote Pass records, She wasn't looking for drama. She just wanted answers. For years, she'd trusted Kody's word when he said things were being handled. But when she realized that nothing was moving forward, she decided to see for herself. And that is when everything changed. According to what Janelle later told close friends, the documents didn't match what Kody had been telling the family. The land wasn't evenly divided the way he'd promised. In fact, some of the parcels weren't even registered the way the wives believed. It turned out most of the property taxes were being paid under a joint family account, one that Janelle and Christine had contributed to heavily over the years. But the deed listings and loan records leaned in favor of Kody and Robyn. In other words, the money came from everyone, but the control sat with just two people. Janelle was stunned. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this was structure, deliberate, confusing structure, designed to keep everyone dependent on Kody's version of events. She found out when Kody and Robyn bought their big house in Flagstaff, part of the financing was tied up with the family account that had been originally set aside for developing Coyote Pass. That meant indirectly the other wives helped pay for Robyn's home. Confronting Kody about it, he brushed her off. He told her she was twisting things, and that it was all part of the bigger plan. But Janelle wasn't buying it anymore. She'd spent years managing family finances, paying bills, helping them out of debt. She knew numbers, and these didn't add up. That's when she went public. Not through a big tell all interview, but quietly during an episode where she refused to commit any more money to the Coyote Pass project. You could see it in Kody's face. He was blindsided. Because Janelle wasn't making a scene, she was making a statement until I see proof that my money is safe. I'm not investing another cent. Fans watching the episode said it was one of the first times Kody's confidence cracked on camera. And soon after, rumors began spreading that TLC producers were re-editing scenes to tone down how defensive he looked. But by then, the truth was already out. Janelle had quietly shown the world that the dream of Coyote Pass, this grand symbol of unity and faith, was actually built on confusion, control, and financial imbalance. And once fans saw that, they couldn't unsee it. The Brown family wasn't a team anymore. It was Kody and Robyn versus everyone else. And for Janelle, that realization wasn't just painful, it was freeing because she finally understood. She'd been loyal to a lie. After Janelle uncovered what was really going on with Coyote Pass, things inside the Brown family went from tense to explosive. The moment she stopped funding Kody's land plans, everything shifted. Alliances formed, old wounds reopened, and the illusion of unity completely fell apart. Christine immediately sided with Janelle. She'd been warning everybody for years that Kody's version of family business always seemed to benefit Robyn most. Now, with Janelle's discovery, Christine finally had confirmation. The two started talking more, and those conversations became less about anger and more about survival. How to move forward as women who'd poured decades into a system that never valued them equally. Meanwhile, Robyn was livid. She reportedly told TLC producers that Janelle was trying to destroy the family, and accused her of spreading misinformation. But behind the scenes, Robyn was panicking. If fans turned against her and Kody, the entire public image they'd built could crumble, and with it, their main source of income from the show. Mary was stuck in the middle. She'd been detached for years, but she still hoped for peace. Yet, even she admitted on camera that something about the Coyote Pass situation never felt right. She said she didn't know what was happening with the money, which, in a family that claimed transparency, said a lot. Kody, however, refused to take responsibility. He told producers, "They're just bitter. They didn't trust the process, but it wasn't about trust anymore, it was about evidence." Janelle's financial records, which she showed Christine privately, proved she had contributed far more into shared accounts than Robyn had. Yet she had nothing tangible to show for it. And when Christine mentioned this in an interview, the internet exploded. Fans started piecing together timelines, property documents, and financial statements that had been made public over the years. They realized Janelle's story wasn't just plausible, it was consistent with everything they'd seen Kody do since Robyn entered the picture. That is when the fanbase split in two. One side accused Janelle and Christine of being bitter exes. The other side called Kody and Robyn manipulative masterminds. And for the first time, the show stopped being a quirky family docuseries and became something much deeper, a story about control, faith, and the cost of silence. By the time the reunion episode filmed, you could feel the fracture on screen. Christine wouldn't even look at Kody. Mary sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact. And Janelle, calm but firm, said something that made the whole room fall silent. "I don't think any of us were ever truly equal. We were just told we were." That moment became the defining line of the season. It wasn't a fight. It was a realization. The family had been built on a structure that worked only when everyone stayed quiet. And now, with Janelle refusing to stay silent, that structure was collapsing in real time. By the time Janelle's revelations about Coyote Pass started spreading online, TLC producers were in a tricky spot. They had a goldmine of drama, but they also had a brand to protect. The Brown family wasn't just any reality television cast. They were the face of plural marriage in mainstream media. And Coyote Pass was supposed to be their happily ever after storyline, so when Janelle started questioning the finances, producers had a choice: do they show the truth, or protect the narrative that kept the show alive? According to a former crew member who later spoke off the record, the tension behind the scenes was intense. There were several discussions about how much of the financial story to include. Some producers reportedly said, "If we air this, it destroys Kody's credibility completely." Others said, "That is exactly why people will watch." In the end, TLC did what they always do. They split the difference. They kept enough of Janelle's frustration to build suspense, but cut out most of the concrete details that made Kody look bad. For example, one deleted scene shows Janelle attempting to review tax paperwork on camera. She mentions that certain payments don't match the property deeds. That entire moment was edited out of the final episode. Instead, they cut to Kody saying, "We're working it out, it's complicated." But it wasn't complicated, it was controlled. Behind the scenes, Kody reportedly had growing influence over production decisions. After Christine left, TLC feared losing their central figure, so they leaned on Kody and Robyn to keep the show anchored. That meant, in some ways, protecting their image became part of the business strategy. When Janelle refused to film certain scenes that painted her as emotional or irrational, Kody accused her of sabotaging the show. But she didn't care anymore. To her, this wasn't about ratings, it was about respect. And here is where it gets interesting. Once Janelle stopped playing along, TLC quietly shifted focus. They started filming more with Christine, showing her new independence and happiness because viewers had turned on Kody. Janelle's honesty had changed the show's energy completely. Even fans have noticed the editing patterns. One fan forum compared early seasons to the recent ones and found that scenes of Kody's financial planning used to be long and detailed. Now they're vague and full of cuts, almost as if someone doesn't want the receipts aired. So what did TLC know? They knew Janelle was right. They knew the money trail didn't line up. But they also knew that exposing it all at once would destroy the show as main character, and the ratings with him. Instead, they chose slow, burn chaos. Let the wives reveal things piece by piece, season after season, to keep viewers hooked. But now that Janelle had gone public, and fans started connecting the dots online, that careful control began to unravel. People weren't just watching the show anymore, they were investigating it, and suddenly, the story wasn't just about the Browns, it was about TLC itself. How much they knew, how much they covered, and how long they'd been complicit. When the truth about Coyote Pass started to come to light, the internet's reaction was instant, and vicious fans, who had once felt sympathy for Kody and Robyn, quickly flipped. It wasn't a gradual change, it was a full-blown revolt. On Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok, fans began to compile clips, timelines, and receipts. They noted how Kody's building soon promises had been ongoing for years with no apparent progress, and compared Robyn's mansion, replete with custom furniture and a private backyard, to the trailers and rental houses the other wives were barely affording. As one viral post quipped, Janelle was camping on her own land while Kody was cozy in Robyn's mansion. That says everything. From that moment on, the narrative changed completely. Kody wasn't the misunderstood patriarch anymore. He was the manipulator who built a dream on other people's sacrifices. And Robyn, she became the queen of denial, the wife who benefited from the chaos while pretending to be the victim. You could feel the frustration from fans who have followed the Browns for over a decade. They'd invested years into believing the family's vision of unity and faith. Now, they felt duped. Petitions even started circulating. asking TLC to give Janelle and Christine their own spin-off, a show without Kody or Robyn. Within days, it racked up tens of thousands of signatures. Even more surprising, people from Kody's past started speaking up. A few extended family members commented online that Janelle was the one who always managed the money responsibly, and that Kody never understood finances. Those quiet confirmations only fueled the fire. Robyn tried to fight back. She gave interviews where she broke down crying, insisting that she and Kody were still working on the dream, and that everyone misunderstood the process. But by then, no one was buying it. Fans noticed her tears always came when her reputation was on the line, not when other wives were struggling. The sympathy she once enjoyed turned into skepticism. Meanwhile, Janelle stayed calm. She didn't rant or post cryptic messages, she just kept speaking in that even, grounded tone that made people trust her even more. When asked in an interview if she thought Kody lied to her, she said simply, "I think he told himself a story and believed it, but that doesn't make it true." That one line went viral. It wasn't emotional, it was powerful, and it perfectly captured why fans were suddenly rallying behind her. From YouTube commentators to Facebook fan groups, everyone was dissecting the same question: if Janelle hadn't exposed the truth, how long would Kody have kept everyone waiting for a dream that was never real? For years he'd said, "We'll build next year." Now, no one believed he ever planned to build anything at all. The shift was so strong that TLC couldn't ignore it. They started reshaping promos, cutting trailers that focused more on the women's strength and less on Kody's leadership. It was subtle, but clear. Even the network knew who fans were rooting for now. And while Kody tried to spin it as a family misunderstanding, the public wasn't fooled anymore. Janelle had done what no one else could. She exposed the truth, stayed composed, and completely flipped the power dynamic. The man who once controlled the narrative now couldn't even control the comment section. Once Janelle walked away for good, the shift in her life was quiet, but powerful. There was no dramatic announcement, no flashy breakup scene. She just stopped waiting for Kody to change and started building a life that actually felt real. The first thing she did was cut financial ties completely. She closed the joint accounts, took her name off anything connected to Coyote Pass, and started managing her own income again. After years of her earnings being tied up in family funds, she finally had full control. Friends say it was like watching a weight lift off her shoulders. She rented a modest home in Flagstaff, close enough to her kids, but far enough from Kody's world to finally breathe. For the first time in decades, Janelle was making decisions without asking for permission, or waiting for a group discussion that never led anywhere. And then something unexpected happened. She started smiling again. You could see it in her interviews. The worry that had hung over her face during the last few seasons was gone. She laughed easily. Her tone was lighter. She looked confident, even peaceful. Christine noticed it too. During one of their online chats, Christine said, "You look so happy, Janelle, like you finally came home to yourself." Janelle just smiled and said, "Yeah, I think I did." That one moment told fans everything away from Kody's control. She was thriving. She began working more closely with her sons, spending time on projects she cared about, and even getting more involved with her wellness business, something Kody had always dismissed as a distraction. Now, it wasn't a distraction, it was her freedom plan. And while Robyn and Kody were still spinning their story on camera, Janelle was living her truth off camera. No more fake unity. No more excuses. Just authenticity. In one quiet interview, she said, "I waited years for a dream that wasn't mine. Now, I am building something that is." That line hit home for so many viewers, especially women who'd stayed in one-sided relationships, hoping someone would finally keep their promises. Janelle didn't need revenge or attention. Her peace was her statement. Even her kids noticed the difference. Her sons said they hadn't seen their mom this grounded in years. She cooked more, traveled more, and started reconnecting with old friends she'd lost touch with during the chaos. Meanwhile, Kody was unraveling. He couldn't handle the fact that Janelle wasn't angry, she was indifferent. And for someone like Kody who thrives on control, that kind of calm is devastating. When TLC cameras caught them meeting after the split, his frustration was written all over his face. He wanted her to argue. He wanted her to chase validation. Instead, she looked him in the eye and said, "I am good, Kody. I really am." That was the end of the story for her and the start of something new. Because while Kody and Robyn were still clinging to the ashes of what used to be, Janelle had quietly done what he never could. She built a foundation that actually stood for something real. After everything that went down, it didn't take long for Janelle and Christine to realize they were stronger together than they ever were under Kody's control. Both women had walked away at different times, for different reasons, but the story was the same. They had been patient, loyal, and hopeful, only to be blamed for the collapse of a dream that never was in the first place. So when Christine invited Janelle to collaborate on a few social projects, fans were in an uproar. But what they didn't realize was that behind the scenes, this partnership went deeper than just friendship. It was about taking back their narrative. Kody had always relied on the show to tell his version of events. He'd talk about disloyal wives and broken trust, as Robyn would cry on cue about being misunderstood. But now, Christine and Janelle had something Kody didn't: credibility and unity. They started sharing small, powerful truths in interviews, such as details in the way things were financially run, what really happened behind closed doors, and how emotional manipulation worked. They didn't name, call, or rant. They just told the truth in their measured voices, and that calm made it hit so much harder. Christine once said in a live stream, when you realize that loyalty was only expected and not returned, that is when everything changes. Janelle nodded and added, we gave him years of our lives. All we wanted was honesty. That clip went viral overnight. Fans started calling them the sister wives who broke the cycle. For the first time in years, the two women weren't tied to Kody's chaos. They were standing in their own light, supporting each other instead of competing for scraps of attention. And it wasn't just emotional support, they started to rebuild together. Literally, Christine, who had settled in Utah, invited Janelle to visit often. They began discussing possible business ventures, even a podcast, to share their stories directly with fans, uncut and unfiltered by TLC. Meanwhile, Kody was losing control of the narrative fast. Every time he tried to defend himself on air, fans compared his defensiveness to Janelle and Christine's quiet confidence. The contrast was brutal. Even insiders from TLC hinted that producers were starting to see where the real story was. Janelle and Christine's bond, rooted in truth and healing, was far more compelling than Kody's endless self-justifications. By now, Robyn's tearful scenes were falling flat. Viewers weren't sympathizing anymore. They were rolling their eyes, because the real power, the real growth, was happening off-screen between two women who had finally realized they didn't need validation from anyone else. And the best part, they were doing it without bitterness. In one clip, Janelle summed it up perfectly. We don't want revenge. We just want peace. But peace starts with truth. That line became a mantra for fans everywhere. It wasn't about tearing anyone down. It was about standing up and saying, enough. Together, Christine and Janelle had done what no producer or storyline twist could ever do. They turned the show's narrative upside down. No longer the wives of Kody Brown. They were now the women who walked away and won. And just when everyone thought the story was finally over, Janelle dropped one last truth that changed everything. Something about Coyote Pass that even the producers didn't want to touch. When everyone thought the Coyote Pass saga had finally faded into the background, Janelle dropped a quiet but game-changing revelation that left even longtime fans speechless. It came during a sit-down interview, months after the dust had settled. She wasn't emotional or angry, just calm, reflective, and ready to close the chapter for good. The interviewer asked her what she thought would happen to Coyote Pass now that the family was fractured. Janelle paused for a moment, then said something no one expected. The land was never really ours the way people think it was. That one line stopped everything. She went on to explain that, according to updated property records, parts of Coyote Pass had quietly been refinanced, shifted, and tied up under Robyn's name. The family had been told it was all in a shared trust, but in reality, the legal control was never evenly distributed. Kody had known, Robyn had known, but the others, Janelle, Christine, and even Mary, had been left out of the loop. For years, Kody had used the land as a promise, a future, a symbol of unity. But it turned out that promise was built on paper that didn't match the dream. Fans went into overdrive. Online forums pulled the actual deeds and confirmed it. The ownership was lopsided. Everything Janelle had suspected was true, and the irony, All that time, Kody accused the other wives of not believing in the dream. He was the one holding the truth hostage. Janelle explained that when she finally saw the documents for herself, it was like everything clicked. "That is when I stopped waiting," she said softly. Because the land was never the point. Freedom was. She wasn't bitter, just done. She didn't need Coyote Pass anymore. She had something better. Peace, independence, and the satisfaction of knowing she'd finally broken free from a story built on control. Christine later confirmed the discovery, saying, "When Janelle told me, I just laughed. Not because it was funny, but because we'd known all along, we just didn't have proof." And that was the moment that sealed it. The illusion of Kody's dream officially ended, not with a fight, but with facts. After that, everything changed. Fans stopped waiting for the big house storyline to return. They wanted to see what Janelle and Christine would do next. The spin-off rumors grew louder. TLC said nothing. And Kody, once the lead player in the drama, became a backdrop to the story he used to narrate. In the end, Janelle's strength wasn't in confrontation. It was in clarity. She didn't burn down the dream. She showed very clearly what lay behind the dream. And for the first time in Sister Wives history, the power didn't belong to Kody. It belonged to the women who walked away and refused to be silent anymore. As Janelle said in her final words of that interview, "You can't build a future on secrets, and if you try, the land will always tell the truth." Fade out, a quiet ending, but one that said it all.